A. Swerdlow.
And I'm Janet Diane Mourglia-Swerdlow.
And this is our first expansions podcast called Expanding Your Life.
We're very excited to share all these tips and affirmations and wonderful things, more things than you could possibly imagine are going to come out in these podcasts, even more things than we can imagine, because they're going to grow and expand and be fabulous and increasingly more fabulous as we grow along.
So don't forget to sign up now and join us every single month as we bring you incredible information. It'll be new every single time. Hello. Well, you caught me at my favorite thing to do, and that's shoveling snow. I write about it, well, pretty much every day in the winter, as you well know. And as you can see, here in Michigan, we have our fair share of snow, and it's not even wintertime yet. It's still fall. So I should become an expert on shoveling. I am actually using a very old shovel, and I would like to get at some point the new ones that have an ergonomic handle that kind of bend so that you don't have to work so hard and bend at the waist. Whenever you do shovel, you should be very careful about how you lift. Here in Michigan, the lake effect snow that we have is very light and fluffy most of the time, but sometimes when we get system snow that comes across from the Pacific, it's a bit heavy and gloppy and wet, and it's like shoveling wet sand, and it can be very disturbing. And so what you do then is you push, and I'll just show you, as you might have seen before, you just push. You don't strain yourself. And then when you lift, bend at the knees so that you don't have to lift so much weight so far. Always make nice little piles so that you don't have to throw it. When you throw the heavy snow, it pulls out your back and your arms and can even wrench your waist and your legs. So just go easy. You know, half of least resistance. Snow plows are going through. You can consider this really an exercise segment of our little podcast here, because I am a personal trainer, and I will in the future be giving you other types of exercises to do. But in the wintertime, those of you who live in snow climates, there really is not a better exercise for you to do than snow shoveling. It's a combination of aerobic and weight training. So you're getting both at the same time. And when it stops snowing and the air is nice and crisp, it's a great way to get exercise, fresh air, and rejuvenate yourself. So when you do shovel, push slowly. Don't strain yourself. If you hit a patch of ice, just go around it and come back to that later. Lift from the knees. Try to get an ergonomic shovel, which I should get myself. And really, have fun and enjoy the exercise.
Hi, nice to see everybody. I'm so happy to be able to share some of my life with you. One of the things that I have been asked many, many times is about what to cook. And for those of you who took my old newsletter, you know I had recipes in there and some pictures off the internet. But this is better because now I'm inviting you into my kitchen, and I'm going to show you one-on-one what it is that I do, and hopefully give you some ideas of how you can take better care of yourself. And if you're lucky, in my new newsletter, Janet's Magnify Your Mind, I may actually write these recipes down for you. But in the meantime, you can see what I do. So, just so you know, it's a very cold, snowy day here in Michigan. And I'm all dressed for the cold weather outside. It's cold. And on a cold day, especially if you're not feeling well, you have a cold, or you just want to warm up from shoveling snow, which Stewart later on will be sampling this soup for you. I got my big soup pot. And all I do is I start off by putting in steam distilled water. This goes in my pot. We distill it ourselves, you know. So of course makes it better because it's homemade distilled water. And in here I have some chicken carcasses because I roast chickens. These were organic, specially raised. for us by a local farmer. And after I've roasted them and we have eaten them, I put the carcasses into my freezer so that I can make soup later. So this is the first step, is making your broth. Now, if you don't want to do all this, you can go to the store and get some organic chicken stock. But basically, I just put it in the pot. And I have to get some more water. And I'm going to cover it up. Big pot, and I know it looks huge to you, but by the time I'm done with my soup, I like to have lots of room because I also put lots of veggies in. So I cover it almost so it's to the top. I don't know if you want to take a look into the pot, and you can see that it's just about covered to the top. And all I do from there is I turn my burner on to like a medium high, and I'm going to let it sit here for a few hours until everything that's on the bone falls off. And that's going to make my chicken stock. So from there we're going to make some delicious chicken soup. Alright, here we are back again after several hours of boiling the bones. Now I want you to remember how it looked like when you first looked in the pot, how it was all congregated together. Now I want you to look in the pot again, because what's happening is everything is falling apart. Everything is very, very tender. The bones are separating, the meat is separating. That's how you know that your soup is ready to have the bones taken out. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour it into another pot, and I'm going to start picking apart the meat and the bones. But see how nice that is and tender? Everything just falls off. So what before looked like something not much you wanted to deal with, now you are getting some really wonderful rich broth in there. So next step, let's pour it into the pot. Here we are, taking the meat and the bones out of the pot. Because what you're going to do is you're going to pick through and take all that nice meat off. And of course I'm lucky, I have a couple of dogs. So things like the skin that you don't want in your soup, you can feed to the dogs. It just falls apart really nicely, and then you can set the meat aside, because after we get all this taken apart, down below we have our broth, which we're going to strain. So if there are any tiny little bones left, just run everything through the strainer. You've got your broth in the bottom. And you can add all your nice veggies to that, which we're going to do. So we're going to have some really wonderful soup on this cold, snowy Michigan day. So all of this comes out. And it's amazing what we can do with a pile of bones. And you can do this with any soup. If you cook a roast and it has a bone in it, you can cook a turkey, you can make turkey soup. What a nice way to nurture and feed yourself, nurturing your body, nurturing your mind, nurturing your soul. For this I left the breast meat on, so this one's going to have some nice meat for the soup. Alrighty, and this is going to come off. I'm just going to set it over here in my kitchen sink for a minute, and I'm going to pour this in. Emptied, I'm going to run it through one more time to get all the bones and little tiny bones or pieces of meat that are in there. Hi, we've got veggies for you here now. I want you to understand that we're doing low-carb chicken soup, and one thing that I haven't told you yet is if you have a big gut around you, or you know someone that has a big gut around them, most likely they're either diabetic type 2 or they're pre-type 2 diabetes. So this is really an excellent soup for them, and if you have lots of protein in your diet and you have wonderful low-carb veggies like these, that will help you right away drop the weight and help get your insides back into shape. So what I do instead of using potatoes, which are a high-carb root vegetable, is I use turnip, which is really good, and I left one whole so that you can see what it looks like, and it's very easy to fix. And if you don't tell people that there aren't potatoes in the soup, they won't even know. So all I do is I take the top and I cut it off like this. I move this out of the way so you can see. And then I take the bottom off, and I have a potato peeler, and this is been in cold storage, so it's not as easy to peel as a fresh turnip right out of the ground, but you can just take that peel right off. I do use all organic vegetables, or pretty much I don't use them, so you might want to keep that in mind. You do also want to look up online what is low carb, and so you have a rough idea of what you're choosing. Because carrots are high carb, beets are high carb, potatoes, sweet potatoes, a lot of root vegetables are high carb, and you want to go to the low carb ones so that you can help with your weight loss, with maintaining your internal organ health, as well as everything else. So I'm just going to quickly chop these up, and while I'm doing this, I want to tell you something else that I do, which I've started doing the more I get involved in what's going on with my health, is before I even use these vegetables, I put them in a bath of food-grade hydrogen peroxide. You can get that at your health food store, and I take about a gallon or 2 gallons of water, and I put it in my tub. I pour in about 1 ounce to 2 ounces of the food-grade hydrogen peroxide, and I let them soak probably anywhere from 15-20 minutes, or if I'm off doing something else and come back. That helps take off any molds that are in that you pick up in the dirt, any bacteria, any things, microorganisms that you don't want in your body, because technically you should be able to handle any of that. The issue is with most people these days is our bodies are under so much stress anyway. It's just one more stress that you have to handle. So what we want to do is we want to start taking those stresses off of your body for now. In fact, a lot of people don't realize that people who are allergic to peanut butter, you know there are a lot of peanut allergies these days. It's not because they can't handle the peanuts, which technically, as you probably already know, they're not even a nut, they are a legume. Most people are allergic to the molds in the peanuts and within the shells, not the peanuts themselves. So if you could get clean peanuts, you probably would be okay. Those are just things you want to keep in mind. Anyway, I'm just going to chop these up. As you can see, they're kind of uniform pieces. They're nice. People don't even realize that they're not potatoes when they're eating the soup. So that's good. I'm going to do this one a little bit later, so you don't have to sift through that. The next thing I want to show you is a kohlrabi. This is a Middle Eastern vegetable. It's also very good for blood sugar issues, and so you can eat quite a bit of kohlrabi. It's in the cabbage family. It's excellent for you. If you see it in your store, it may have long leaves that are coming off of it, and kind of an interesting little end here. What I do is after I soak it, I just clean off all this extraneous pieces, which I've done already for you, chopped off the top and bottom. And then I take my knife and I just kind of go around the outside and take that green peel off. It's organic. Technically you could eat it. It is a little tough and very fibrous, so I don't eat it. But it doesn't take much to take it off. And I'm pretty good with my steak knife. A lot of people make fun of me for that. That's my knife of choice. You'll have to find the knife of choice that works best for you. And then all I do is again, just like it's a little tougher than the turnip, as you can see. I do my best to cut it in uniform pieces. And then I slice it up and I put it right into my soup along with everything else. Now for me, when I slice things and do my cooking, it's kind of a creative release. I am sitting at my computer most of the day, as most of you know. So it's a good feeling to be able to chop things up a little bit and kind of stand on my feet, move around a little bit. Plus, I think about how wonderfully nutritious all of this is, and we are very, very fortunate where we live because we have a lot of organic growers. I have one specifically who actually puts a lot of her organic produce in cold storage for myself, which I greatly appreciate. So the food that we have is extremely nutritious. And one of the things that I learned from her, for example, green beans. Most of you eat green beans. If they are commercially grown, they get about 12 cuttings per season. If they are homegrown, most organic farmers only get about 4 pickings per season. So you can see that there's a lot more nutrition that you're going to get when you're only picking them 4 times versus 12. So sometimes those homegrown green beans that actually taste better, there's a reason that they taste better. We put it into strips. I'm just going to cut it up into some chunks and put that in. As I mentioned earlier, I try and keep the pieces a little, kind of uniform because it's a little bit nicer when you actually eat it. And you can put in as much or as little as you like of any of the vegetables. It's kind of your own creation. It's a nice thing about making soup. Celery goes in hot. We have a leek. Leek, as you know, is grown in sandy soil, and a lot of people are a little bit afraid of using them. I've already cleaned this one. I just chop off the root end. I chop off the top. A lot of recipes say to chop off the green leafy part, but I like that and I use it. What I do is I just slit it down with my knife and I open it up. I clean it under water to get all the sand out, and then I plop it into my hydrogen peroxide bath. When it is clean, after it's soaked for a little bit of time, I just take it out and slice it up. It goes in the pot. Makes a really nice flavor for your soup. And you can mix those with onion, which I'm going to be doing in just a few minutes. Also, you can use leeks every day. Just saute them in a little olive oil, a little salt and pepper. Really make a nice veggie. You can also put a little cheese on top if you like that. Here comes my onion. I've already put a little bit in. Save on time, and all I do is I just slice mine up. Onions are actually high in inulin, which is good for blood sugar. Also known to be a blood cleanser. Goes in your pot. And I have some garlic. Now, most of you know what a garlic bowl looks like. I use a lot of garlic in my cooking. That also is good for your immune system. I've peeled some of it so you can see what it looks like, and I left a couple. Different people peel their garlic in different ways. I personally have not found a really quick way to do it, but after you soak it in a hydrogen peroxide bath, the skin becomes damp and soft. I cut off the little bit of the root in there and just pop it out of the skin. So that seems to be, for me, a little bit of a quicker way to do it. Might be different in your world. But again, depending upon the size of your pot, how much garlic you want. This is a whole bowl, and I'm not going to chop it because as it sits and simmers, it's going to get soft and it's going to break up anyway. Next, we're going to put some greens in. I like to have a little bit of color. This is kale, grown by my organic farmer. I'm very fortunate. She has it in her greenhouse. And any of the larger stems I chop off and put away because I don't like those. But they will get tender if you leave it in your soup. Kale is very rich in vitamin K, which is good for your blood. Then it goes in. And last but not least, I have a water bath here. Napa cabbage. You can use any kind of cabbage. I happen to like Napa cabbage, so I don't know that I'm going to put it all in. I'm just going to chop my head in half. Right, you want to look for a nice firm. Now, I prefer bright green, but this time of year I'm happy just to get it, so I'll take it even though it's not quite the color I prefer. You can use regular cabbage. Any kind of cabbage is nice, low carb for your soup. Things moving. And I have already done some bacon. nitrate-free, local grower. There's a nice flavor to the soup. Add that in. I usually do salt and pepper, maybe a little red pepper, but I do that when I serve it. For some reason, that's just my way of doing things. So I'm going to stir everything together. And next, put my bacon, which I've already fried up. Put that in. I like to save the bacon drippings to do greens in. Season green beans with. So that I will save in my refrigerator. This is a pound of nitrate-free, locally grown bacon. I'll mix that in to give it a nice flavor. And the last thing you want to remember, I'm not going to put this in yet because I want my soup to simmer, but the last thing will be the chicken that I took from the bone the last time that, before we started the vegetables. So that is my cooking lesson for today. This recipe will be in Magnify Your Mind, which will be starting soon, so please go ahead and sign up for that subscription because I'm excited to get started with my newsletter again and begin sharing with you more of what I know. Because as my life gets better, I want your life to get better, and we'll do it together. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Hi. A lot of people have been asking me because of the economy, how can I get an affirmation that will encourage me to be prosperous and to have the things that I want in my life? So I have a very simple affirmation that I'm going to give you right now that will help you to achieve the goals if you repeat them mentally over and over in your mind during the day. Write them down on a piece of paper, keep it where you can see it all of the time so you constantly remind yourself to do the affirmation. And the affirmation is as follows: I now receive and accept all the abundance and prosperity of the universe. I'll say it again for you. I now receive and accept all the abundance and prosperity of the universe. And as you say that, surround yourself in a brown color to ground it and hold it into the present moment. And you could even imagine standing with the snow falling down, and every one of those little flakes is your abundance and prosperity falling down around you, building up all around you to great layers and depths. So try that, and let's see how that works for you. A big topic these days is deprogramming, and I'm sure that many of you have heard me talk about it and write about it endlessly on the website and in my lectures. One of the most important aspects of deprogramming, and probably the most basic exercise of them all, is the brown merger symbol, which I have for you here as an example, which one of my clients generously made for me. And as you can see, the brown merger is something you can't really describe verbally, you have to see it. And I do recommend that you read and watch my videos on deprogramming so you can see what it actually looks like. And what you should do is take the brown merger symbol and place it at your pineal gland at the very center of your head. And what that will do is literally reintegrate the fragmented pieces of your personality and start literally, energetically sewing them back together piece by piece. And as you go through each deprogramming exercise, it's very important that you keep this brown merger symbol at your pineal gland at the center of your head so that you are not activated or triggered by anything that you see or do in your own deprogramming exercise. I also recommend that even in your daily life, it's a good idea to keep this brown merger symbol 24/7 at your pineal gland, again at the very center of your head, so that in your daily activities, going to work, interacting with people, whatever you do during the day, we're constantly bombarded by ELF, microwave, words, television, radio, everything in life. We are constantly being stimulated and triggered energetically. And by keeping this brown merger symbol at your pineal gland all of the time, it prevents and blocks you from getting triggered and activated in any way. If all you ever remember in deprogramming is this symbol, this is the basic tool of what you need. Another very important aspect of deprogramming that goes along with the brown merger is the use of the color violet. People do get mixed up between violet and purple, sometimes thinking they're the same color when in fact they're very different. If you go to the back of my Healer's Handbook, you will see a color chart where I purposely have violet and purple next to each other so that you can see the difference. Violet is like an amethyst color. It has more pinkish red in it, whereas purple has more blues in it. And what the violet color does is it acts as a filter and protection of your energy field, so that when you're doing your deprogramming work and keeping yourself constantly in the violet while you're doing your work, you are blocking any energies that might come in to disturb you, and also filtering out any energies that are coming up from within you during your deprogramming process. And I have a little example here of the color violet that you can look at so that you can see what it really looks like energetically and physically. Violet is the most important color you can ever use. It's one of the few colors, along with pale orange, that can be placed in a person's energy field without the use of a permission. And the reason is, since violet represents filtering and protection of energy, that is always acceptable at all times for all people. It is always okay to be energetically filtered and protected. You can keep yourself in it, your loved ones, and especially in your deprogramming process, keep it in and around your body as if you were submerged and immersed in violet. This is another example of the color violet. In fact, I think this is a very perfect example of it, because we have with it the silver infinity symbol of the Oversoul, which, as you know, you place over your crown chakra, and you send everything up into that Oversoul. Every person, place, and thing that you are not feeling comfortable with or disturbing you, send it up. And that goes along with deprogramming, because Oversoul symbol, a lot of people don't realize, can also be used for deprogramming. Place that silver infinity over your crown chakra, keep yourself in the violet color, and then send up everything that you're seeing during your deprogramming exercise, any images, any hurt feelings, anything that comes up, send it right up into the Oversoul, get it out of you, brown merge at your pineal gland, and that's the perfect recipe for a preliminary and basic deprogramming exercise. Practice this as much as you can. You can never do it too much. If you don't feel well, some people start to get reactions from deprogramming. They get nauseous, they get pains in their bodies, headaches, whatever you may get. You may not get anything, but just in case you do, keep yourself in the violet, filter and protect yourself, send it up into the Oversoul, brown mercury. Cannot say that enough. So try that, and email me your thoughts, post it on the website, let me know how it works for you, okay? I travel a lot, as you know, and I go all over the world, and I have very many interesting experiences, to say the least. In fact, one of the jokes is that you don't want to travel with me because you never know what's going to happen. One of the more interesting stories, maybe humorous stories that happened to me, was a couple of years ago, maybe 6-7 years ago now, when I was working in Perth, Western Australia, and I was staying with a family where the husband was actually a prince of Sri Lanka, but now lived in Australia. And he had a daughter who was a teenager at the time. I think she was about 15 at that time I was there. And after the end of my seminar, and I did conferences, and I was there for a bit of time, the day before I was leaving, the family came to me and they said, guess what? We thought maybe our daughter should go back to the United States with you and go to school there. And I thought, oh, haha, that's very funny because I'm leaving tomorrow. And she doesn't have a visa. And they said, well, not a problem. They're going to make a few phone calls and they'll get everything ready. And I said, oh, you know, I was kind of taken aback. So I quickly called Janet and I said, would you like some 15-year-old princess to come live with us for a year or so? And surprisingly, Janet said, well, okay, because we have 5 boys, so having a girl would be an interesting experience. So, that being said, the very next day, they managed to get the girl on all my flights, going all the way back. They had connections, of course. When you're a prince, you have these connections. And so he did say to me, take her passport and hold it with you because she's very careless and I don't want her to lose it. So I had her passport with me, and we left Perth, and our first stop was in Singapore. And if you've ever been to Singapore airport, it has amazing, amazing restaurants, shops. It's like a city all by itself. You could just spend days and weeks in the Singapore airport. And so we had a 10-hour layover in Singapore, and it was overnight, much of it. And so we hung out with in those days I wasn't so organic, we hung out in the McDonald's there for a bit of time because that's what she ate. And then we just kind of rested in the lounge area. There were couches and stuff like that. And I said to her, okay, you wait here. I need to use the restroom and I'll be back in a few minutes. So she was sitting there on the couch and I went to the restroom. And then when I came back, I saw that she was surrounded by Singaporean soldiers with machine guns. And the reason is that overnight they were checking everyone in the airport for their ID. And she didn't have any ID, and she was obviously not Singaporean, so she was suspicious. And here I was coming up and seeing her surrounded by 6 or 7 soldiers with rifles pointed at her. And so I quickly thought, that doesn't mean anything to me. I could just leave, and who's going to know anything different? And I thought, well, no, I better not. I mean, her father is a prince, and she is a princess. So I did gingerly go over there and say, hi, is there any problem here? And they said that they needed her ID, so I whipped out her passport and I looked at it, and then they looked at my passport and they went, why are you, this adult, middle-aged, which I hate to use that, male, with this teenage girl traveling by yourselves to the United States? Kind of look a little suspicious, don't you think? I didn't have a note or anything from her father either. I just had to explain what was going on, and they did accept it. So luckily, we got our passports back and we went directly to the gate and we waited there. Now, the funniest thing is, Asian names, customs, accents, sometimes when you're overtired and maybe not fully focusing, they can be a little bit humorous. So at the gate, the flight was going from Singapore to Tokyo. They announced that they were ready to board, and the person who announced it had a very unusual names. In fact, while we were waiting, he said, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gadazira, and I am boarding your flight to Tokyo. So here I am, boarding a flight to Tokyo with a guy named Godzilla, okay? How funny is that? You cannot make this up. But when he said his name was Gadazira, and we were going to Tokyo, it just struck me so funny. I started bursting out laughing. Literally, I fell on the floor laughing, crying, and so did the little princess. And everyone around us, being Asian and thinking that was a normal name, Godzilla, thought we were very odd. But I couldn't stop laughing the entire flight to Tokyo. But the other bad thing that happened was, when we left Singapore to go to Tokyo, this is after we already took off, the pilot announced that we had to fly through not 1, but 2 typhoons. Why couldn't he tell me that before I got on that flight, so maybe I could change it? I don't want to fly through 1 typhoon, let alone 2 typhoons. So that was an experience also. And then we finally got to Tokyo. A little jumpy and bumpy, but we got there. And then we had to transfer again to a flight from Tokyo to Chicago. And I was traveling business class at the time, and so I thought I could board first with the first people. And there was a very nice Japanese lady standing at the gate, and she was announcing the boarding. And I went up with my business class boarding pass, and I gave it to her, and she said, please step it aside. I said, but they're boarding, and I'm business, please step it aside. So I stepped it aside, and like 2 seconds later, she said, okay, now you're bored. I'm like, why did you do that to me? Why couldn't I go on? It was like a Pearl Harbor something, like revenge or something. I don't understand that. But the princess thought it was very funny that she said, step it aside. And every time I would say that, she would burst out laughing. And of course, nobody would know why she was laughing. And then finally, we got to Chicago. And I go through the U.S. part because I'm a U.S. citizen. And Princess had to go through the international immigration. So I went out there first. And I was waiting for her behind where the immigration person stamps her passport. I was waiting for her where her line was. And then I see, when she's up at the counter, giving her passport in, and I guess explaining what she's doing here, a 15-year-old coming through immigration alone, she points to me and I guess told him, like, that older man is taking me home to his family, okay? And like, I'm the princess from Australia. So the immigration guy just looks at me, and he looks at me, and like looks at her, and he texts like, is that this guy you're going with? That's safe? I'm like, hi, like, innocent. So that's what security is. They let her go, didn't ask me any questions. I really could have been God knows what, but thank goodness I'm not. And so she came home with us. Well, anyway, it turns out that after being here for a year, Princess was really a princess and wanted to be treated like that. And we do not have princess activities in this house. So Princess had to go back to Australia. And from what I understand after that, she bopped around to a few other countries because she didn't fit in too many places. Well, that's one of my humorous and somewhat interesting, scary story about my last trip to Australia and through Asia. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe next time I can reenact it with you with actors and things like that. When we talk about color, it's best to start at the beginning. And I'm going to talk about the color brown, which is really not a chakra color. It goes from the top of the thighs to the bottom of the feet. And it is the color of the Earth's gravitational field. And that is brown. This is why tree bark, soil, sand are all brown, because they're resonating with the Earth's gravitational field. When you surround yourself in brown, you ground and balance yourself, keep yourself connected to the Earth. And even during any visualization or technique that we may do in the future, or that you may try in the future, you always end it in brown, because brown pulls you back down into the body, grounds and balances you, and keeps you in the present moment. That is why at the end of all my exercises that you may read about or see on a DVD, I end them all in brown. And here I'm going to show you in the chakra sock that I have, the color brown is at the very bottom of the series of the 7 chakra colors. And so this is actually an 8th color, which should begin the entire series. If you notice, proportionally, the brown is the largest color. And that is because it covers the largest part of the body, the legs and the feet. That's the longest part of your body, takes up the most space in your height. And so it's a very important color that you use at all times. Whenever you feel unsettled, imbalanced, unnerved, upset in any way, practice this. Balance your T-bar and put brown in and around your body as if you're immersed in it, submerged in it, filtering in and around you and through every cell of your body. Feel the grounding, balancing energy. It will calm you and make you feel better. Even when you're just not feeling well physically, first try using brown in and around the body to ground and balance yourself, and see if that doesn't settle everything within you. Brown is probably one of the most important colors that we can use in hyperspace work. So practice that in the next coming weeks. Those of you who haven't tried it before, use brown. If you need a visual aid, you can always use something like a chakra sock, a brown table, a brown bathrobe or towel, brown shoes, brown pants, whatever you need to get that color in your mind. Don't worry about not being able to close your eyes and just visualize the color. A lot of people have that problem because of medications, programming, other things in their environment that block the pineal gland from working properly. Don't worry about that at the moment. It is a better idea to use a visual aid, look at something brown for a period of time, then close your eyes and let that after image soak into the brain, and you'll see after a while it'll become like second nature to you, and you'll be able to use brown at will. So try brown, and hopefully it'll work very good for you. Janet, I've had a lot of people write into me about their children wanting to know, how do you prepare a small child or even a teenager for what's going on in the world today?
Wow. Well, that's a big question, as you probably already figured out. You know, I think really the most important thing is to start somewhere. A lot of people, because they don't know where to start, they kind of have a plan of inaction, figuring that that is going to, it's better just to sit there and not do anything because they don't know where to start. But you have to talk to your children. And I think the biggest thing that you can do for a small child or teenager, because that's a big age group for us to cover, is to give them a sense of personal power, that they have a say in their own life. And a lot of times, I've seen this for many, many children, they feel like they don't have any say. And even children who come from the most strictest families will get out in public away from their parents and they're chaos. And that's because they feel like that no one is listening to them at home and they don't have that point of personal power at home. And I really believe that the family unit is where people can give their children what they need, make them feel important, give them a sense of personal power, and let them know that what they say and do is as important as what the adults say and do.
But not to the point where they feel, well, for example, they shouldn't treat a child like the child was an adult, because that can give this child a false sense of power and responsibility, and sometimes can even try to control the parent that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to work within the constraints of what the child can do, and every child is unique. So therefore you have to see what that particular child needs. But they need to have an opinion. It's kind of like as above, so below. So as the parent, you're kind of in the oversoul position. So you're still letting the child say what they need, but you want to align their goals with your goals. The same way as an adult, we align our goals with the goals of our oversoul. And basically, we still give our oversoul ultimate say. So the parent still has ultimate say, the parent is still in charge, but the child feels like they have a say. At least they can state their opinion about what's going on and what they feel they need.
What about in school where they're learning certain things about history or even nutrition, and you know that that's not accurate? For example, you know, in Columbus Day weekend, they're teaching children how wonderful Christopher Columbus was when in fact he took slaves and murdered people. Or they're teaching children that a nutritious meal would include white sugar and processed meats and things like this. So how do you reconcile when a child comes home and says, "Mommy, you know, I had this and this in school and I learned this and this, but you don't do that at home?" So the child gets confused. What do you do with the child so that they don't stand out like a sore thumb in the school because they're different? You want them to at least have friends and not be cast aside, and also yet maintain what you feel is the proper way to live and to know information.
Well, no man is an island, as everybody knows. We don't live in this world just ourselves or in this very small group of people who believe this way or that way. It's very important to know what society as a whole believes. And I think a child should be taught. This is what you're being taught in school. This is what most people believe. This is what we believe, and this is how we do it. And it doesn't mean that they have to make themselves stick out like a sore thumb, but they can listen to what's going on. And it gives a good point of discussion for the home. Hey, Mom, this is what's going on here. Hey, Dad, this is what's going on there. But this is what you say. What's the difference? And also, I believe in reading. Read to your child. Pick up the newspaper and say, look, this is what's going on in the newspaper. Or show them this book. This is what it says in this book. Now, this is what you're learning at school. So it's not just coming from Mom and Dad, but they have other sources which support what it is that you're telling them so that they can see what's going on at school represents a very small portion of what's really going on in the world. Again, it's empowering them to make up their own mind, their own decision. What do you think? How do you feel when you eat this? How do you feel when you eat that? You know, what do you think? What about the children at school? Are they healthy? Are you healthy? You have to allow them and teach them how to question and think. Not just feed them information, but teach them how to think for themselves. And just like the oversoul, you're guiding them along their journey, along their path for that unique child so they can function in a very varied society where people come from many belief systems and many ways of looking at things. Everyone has their own path, and I teach my own children, as you know, there are many paths to God.
Also, what we used to do is teach what we call secret information. In other words, we would teach our children what we know to be the truth about history and nutrition and everything else, and then they would keep that to themselves in school. They wouldn't raise their hand and tell the teacher, well, my mommy and daddy say this and this, and make themselves look very different. So I think calling it secret information and making sure that they know that it's private, not to discuss it in public with their teachers and friends unless they're of the same mind pattern. I think that's another way.
Well, yes and no, because I think depending upon the child, but even at this point, if certain things are said at school, I know one of our children will go on the internet and he will research it and he will print it out and he will take it to his teacher and show a different viewpoint. So I think that's very innovative and very interesting and very empowering for the child, because it's not only learning to keep your mouth closed at appropriate times, because as adults we have to learn to know our audience. So as children, we need to teach them, know your audience. If I'm out driving with somebody and it may be a parent, they may not be able to understand everything I say, but I'll still throw out a little this, a little that. And what is your audience? Cultivate it. What can they understand? What can they hear? What can they take within and use? And I teach my children by example. And they can't understand everything I'm saying, but they can understand part of it, and therefore I'm offering that to them. Just like somebody gives me a hand up, I extend my hand below so that we can all go up together. And I teach the children that. And teach by example. It's the best thing that you can do. They pick up everything.
And that's a good point, because I think as soon as a child is able to understand certain words and concepts, you should teach them hyperspace information. Give them examples. Janet has very good children's books, e-books that they can learn. They can learn about colors, they can learn about symbols. You should ask them about their dreams, help them to interpret their dreams so that they know that they're symbolic and have a meaning. There's a lot you can do with children so that they can be prepared to go into this very strange world that we have and deal with a society that doesn't believe in the same things that we believe in, nor accept many of them. Ultimately, I think, I don't know how many years it will take, but I think ultimately people will learn about hyperspace information. I think that's the ultimate goal of mankind, and as we do become connected to other civilizations out there in space, these things will become more common knowledge and accepted. So prepare your children as the best you can, do the best that you can, and like Janet says, know your audience and know when you should say things and when you should remain silent. Thank you for joining us on the Expansions Podcast, Expanding Your Life. Join us again next month when we bring you even more opportunities to learn about yourself, the universe, and existence.
And in the meantime, be sure and visit our site, expansions.com. We have a bunch of fabulous information on there too. It will keep you going through the month until you can see us again live here in person on this podcast.